Same storm system creating problems up the entire coast. Look at this. This is a look at how bad the rip currents were yesterday. We talked about that actually last week, bringing out a double red flag at certain points. All that wind creating dangerous swimming conditions. So officials, they say they had to rescue more than a dozen people because of this. The National Weather Service says 10 swimmers were rescued from rip currents Sunday and another 8 yesterday.
So we know that Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich was tracking this all weekend long on social media. If you follow him, you know you got a sense of how strong the system was, even though maybe in our area we weren't feeling quite those effects. In one post, maybe you remember this, he said if it were later in the season, the storm would have had a name. So maybe we're wondering, would the ship have known to steer clear if that were the case? Would swimmers have avoided the water altogether? So Brad joining us now to talk about the tropical systems that we saw over the weekend and basically explaining the whole naming system and why this perhaps didn't get a name.
Yeah, guys, this is the actual satellite image. Now, if I were to show you this in June, July, August, September, you'd say, Brad, that's a tropical storm or a hurricane. It looked like it on a satellite image, but it didn't get a name. That's what it looked like on Saturday. On Sunday, it was still looking like a tropical system. So why did it not get a name, and why does it even matter? Well, there's specific meteorological criteria for a tropical and subtropical storm. Those both would get names. Now, it clearly wasn't a tropical system because it didn't have that warm core. It didn't have all the ingredients of strong winds near the center, but it most likely was partly subtropical, and that's kind of a hybrid between the two. That means the strong winds are a little bit further away from the center, and it sometimes has some cooler cores to it. So why does it matter? Well, the big story for the weekend was communication. If it had a name, you likely were going to pay attention to it more. That cruise ship might have avoided it, and you also would consider the impacts a lot more. There's also an insurance element to this, guys. A lot of folks don't think about this, but if you're on the coast, there's something called the named storm deductible. If you have that policy and there's an official name given to the storm, your deductibles for any damage caused by that storm could actually change because of that naming. So it does matter. The weekend storm probably should have had a name for communication purposes, but it didn't meet the strict meteorological criteria, so the Hurricane Center didn't give it a name.
Yeah, some definite finite points there.
Yeah,
honestly.
And of course you mentioned two other factors with the cruise lines and maybe why they were in the storm.
Yeah, it just seems it happens all the time, Brad. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
obviously unfortunate.
Sometimes poor information. Sometimes they have to get back to port quickly, so they make a run for it. You know, and they got back. It just wasn't the best 9-hour tour through that storm. You know.